Welcome back, everyone, to the Libertas International podcast. It's your host, me, again, whether fortunately, unfortunately, that is up to you, dear listener. I just want to thank you for tuning in again. It's not lost on me that people will take the time to listen to this podcast. And some episodes, like the episode I'm going to share today, can be hard to listen to. It can be hard to listen to because it involves bad things happening to innocent kids. And I wanted to share a little bit of just what it is that Libertas does to help support law enforcement in their intervention efforts across Latin America. We're not lost to know that there are certain instances where police intervention is needed to help recover a survivor of trafficking. We do not use undercovers. We are not a group that goes in and investigates these different crimes. Rather than, what our approach is we identify police units that we've worked with in the past, that are trusted, vetted units, that we can then support as they look to pull off these intervention efforts. We want to empower the locals. We want to be a resource to them they can count on during the intervention process, and specifically when the aftercare occurs. And so with that, I wanted to share the story of Project Maverick. Project Maverick is a project that happened in 2022, and it involved a very hard case of a survivor that we love very much. We'll call her Julie for this story. I met Julie at an aftercare home, an amazing aftercare home on the outskirts of Antigua, Guatemala, with our amazing partners down there. She came from a family of 6 kids, and she'd already had it rough. She had a very rough upbringing, a very rough childhood. Her father would use rape as a form of punishment. And so when she would misbehave, she would get raped. And this started when she was 6, kept going until she was finally rescued the first time by local law enforcement around the age of 13. And so what would happen is that she would get raped by her father as an example to the other kids to not misbehave. So not only was she raped by her father in a very violent way, he would have the whole family watch it happen, and a particularly evil human being. And it wasn't long before a report happened that ended up getting her out of that house. But how it happened is actually because of her little brother. Her little brother is one of my heroes in this life. This little guy, just an absolute beast of a human being. He could only take watching his little sister go through so much abuse. And so what he did is he intervened on her behalf. During one particularly violent assault, he stepped in, and him only being 7 years old, tried to fight off Julie's father. And Julie's father didn't like that. Not one bit. And so he took a whip to the little boy's back and left him with some permanent scarring that caused him to lose so much blood that he went to the hospital. Local authorities were notified that something awful was happening in that house, and ended up removing all of those siblings. And so they stayed in the aftercare home for a while, where they gained access to quality education. They gained access to a loving family, support, mental health, all the different things that were offered by this wonderful aftercare home. And this is where I first met Julie, and her and I hit it off. We communicated, we had fun, we did something in the aftercare home, like played soccer or did a pull-up contest or something like that, I don't remember. But it was a good connection, and a very sweet kid. She was in this home for about a year. In this home, she received, like we talked about, quality care. But if any of you have been to Guatemala or worked in social services in Guatemala, you know that a lot of the kids' care depends on judges. Depending on the judge that you have, you can either stay in a home or you could go back to family. And right now there's a big push to reunite kids with families, which this podcast I totally support. I think Libertas mainly supports that, as long as it's a healthy environment. There's enough studies that have been shown that it's not even worth discussing, to where kids grow up best in a functioning family. That's where they develop better, they get better grades, they do all these different things. It's not even debatable at this point that that's the best situation for a kid to be in. However, if it's safe. And there's a couple different things that have happened over the last couple years that have made this process less efficient and much more unsafe. First thing is the pandemic. The pandemic put a lot of things in backlog to where the judges and the courts are super behind. In Guatemala was one of the last countries to come out of their COVID protocols that made the last countries in Latin America to come out of their COVID protocols that made this process such a backlogged process. The second one is the UN. The UN has released multiple studies that children actually function better in families, which is true. And UN are subsidizing judges and courts that reunite kids with families. And unfortunately, we've had some very sad consequences because of that, because it's no longer a proper vetting process. It's a way to make money for some judges. 3 is various studies by the same level of by groups in Haiti. And Haiti is an example of where the orphanage system is extremely corrupt, where parents will give children to orphanages just so they can get fed. And a lot of the kids in orphanages in Haiti and across the world actually have living parents, so they're not orphans. And so the commercialized version of that could be even potentially a form of trafficking, has caused a strong distrust in orphanages across the world. There's less churches giving to orphanages. Even Libertas International, we don't give that often to orphanages, homes. We choose to support survivors on a much more individual level. And then in Guatemala specifically, the fourth reason that I'll mention is that in 2017, on International Human Rights Day for Girls, there was a very tragic fire where an aftercare home that was run by the government was corrupted. They were allowing sexual abuse, physical abuse of these girls inside this home, and these girls had just had enough one day, so they decided to protest. And as punishment, they locked all the girls in a room, and a couple of the girls trying to get out started a fire in the mattress, and the fire kept growing, and the door was never unlocked. To where, in the end, at the end of the day, 41 girls lost their lives, 15 survived, but the one that survived with a lot of burns. Some of them will never be the same. Libertas is actually supporting a good amount of these survivors that came from this tragic accident. I mean, it's not an accident. It's a travesty. It was total incompetence by the Guatemalan government to allow this to happen. It is their fault. It was not an accident. And so I bring that up, and I'll touch on that in a different podcast where we're supporting survivors from that specific case. But I bring that up because it's caused a lot of pressure on the Guatemalan government to reunite families, keep them out of homes before families are ready. When you mix all of this into the pot, what happens is like what happened to Julie. Julie had a judge that decided to send her and her siblings back to their mother. And their mother was not prepared to receive them. Their mother was dating a guy who was a pedophile. And this guy talked to Julie's mom and said, "I would like to touch your daughter." And she charged him for it. She said, "You can touch my daughter if you pay my cell phone, if you pay my rent. If you do all these things, I will let you touch my daughter." And that's what happened. Thankfully, our partners in the aftercare home kept a really good relationship with this little girl, kept in touch with her, and told her to reach out if she ever needed help. And this little girl needed help. So she reached out to our partners and said, "This is what's happening to me. I need help. I need someone to come and get me out of the situation, me and my brothers." And so Marissa is her name, Marissa Mejia. She's an attorney down in Guatemala. She reached out to me and was like, "Hey, what can we do? This is what's happening. What can we do? How can we get this girl out?" And so I reached out to a friend of mine, the Department of Homeland Security down in Guatemala City. His name is John. And John was on it right away. He was asking me details of what was happening, how old the girl was, and he got his vetted unit ready to go intervene on her behalf. He asked but one of the holdups was that they had no gas. There was no gasoline in their cars, and to wait for funding, it would have taken another week to get funding to just fill up their trucks. And so what Libertas did in this instant was very simple. We gave them money to fill up their tanks to go arrest this guy. That was it. That was our involvement. So you monthly donors out there that donate potentially, I don't know, $30 a month, that $30 that month probably is the reason that Julie was rescued. So we filled up the trucks, and they headed out. They identified the guy. The guy's name is Peter, and they got her out. They got her and her six siblings out of that home and back inside the aftercare home where she belonged. But the interview process was not easy. It's not easy making a report against your mom. It's not easy giving the most intimate details of what happened to you. And at first, the little girl denied it. She said nothing happened, that she misspoke, and that it wasn't that bad. And it wasn't until the interview her made her feel safe, made her feel heard, and created a trauma-informed environment to where Julie finally spoke the truth of what was happening to her and allowed the legal process to take place. And I share that story, for one, Julie's one of my heroes. I was just with her a few months ago. And I'm just so thankful to know her and to be able to walk with her in this process. We're help supporting her on a couple different levels in her healing so that she can be okay. The guy's in jail. Mother fled. So the mother fled the scene, and we don't know where she is. And the 6 siblings are also with us in the home. So in the end, Project Maverick was a success. We were able to recover many of these survivors and support the arrest of this pedophile. But before I let you guys get on with your day, I want to share 2 important aspects about this case. Is that one, Libertas's support when it came to intervention was filling up the truck with gasoline. That's our model, is we identify needs of our police partners, whatever they may be, flights, overtime, different equipment, training, and we help support them in that aspect to support their intervention efforts. We feel like that's the best way to empower local law enforcement to do their job in the correct way. So the Guatemalan law enforcement are the real heroes in this story on the intervention side. But the rescue itself, a recovery, a rescue, whatever you want to call it, I don't like the word rescue, I'd rather call it recovery. It's Julie that rescued herself. She's the one that was brave enough to reach out for help, because no one would have known what was happening if it wasn't for Julie. And she's the one who continues to rescue herself every single day when she decides to heal, when she decides to work on herself, when she decides to study, and when she decides to confront what's happened to her and continue to work for a better future. And that's something that we believe very deeply at Libertas International, is that survivors rescue themselves. Survivors rescue themselves every single day. And even though there is an intervention aspect that is needed at times, it is the survivor who rescues themselves every day post-recovery to make the decision to continue to survive. And during an assault, the most important thing a survivor can do is survive, and they did that. And it's not something that we believe very deeply here. And so when you donate to Libertas International, I know I plug the donation thing quite a bit, but that's how we survive. That's how we get your support. Please visit libertasfreedom.org, become a monthly donor, become part of our team. The $30 you donate could fill up the gasoline of a cop that day. Or it could give Julie food right after she was rescued so she can get some fried chicken to help her feel comfortable where she's at. And that's why I was pushing you guys to the website. That's why I keep asking for donations, because this is what it looks like. It looks like Project Maverick, where at the end of it all, survivors were rescued and a bad guy was arrested. And so please visit us on libertasfreedom.org. Please follow us on social media. Please give us a like. Please tell your friends. Please subscribe to our website. Please give of your resources to us. It is a matter of life and death for so many girls and women like Julie across Latin America. And with that, I'm signing off. I've got a dinner appointment with one of my board members tonight. Much love to you all. Thank you for spending this time with me, and we will see you next time on the Libertas International podcast.